it correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Where from is the name? Karel is you said Portugal, yeah? Is it Portuguese name?
No, it's actually originally a Czech name, but it's also a very Dutch name. So I've grown up in the Netherlands all my life.
All right. So I assume that you have Czech background. Like, is it you have Czech background, or you are actually or it's Dutch background?
No, originally Czech background. My father and grandparents were refugees from communism. So my grandfather was a scientist and he managed to escape the Czech Republic under communist regime with his family and moved to the Netherlands.
Yeah. Well, we would have like a little similar background, right? I mean, my parents didn't really escape, but they were not really like scientists. So I'm from Poland originally. So we essentially, I assume our parents grew up in very similar reality, right? Just across the border. Um, do you have any connection still to the Czech? Do you have the family there, or all family moved?
Yeah, no, I do, as well as that. I think for my entire childhood, after the wall fell, every single summer we went to Prague because my grandparents did move back there. So I've loads of fond memories and also seeing like the country rebuilt. Basically, my earliest memories is like a 5-year-old kid going there. It definitely was still like empty supermarkets and everything, and now obviously it's a gorgeous city.
So I would. It seemed, I don't know if I assume. I think we might be similar age. So would you say like in the 90s you were going like in the was it in the 90s your childhood and going to see the summer or later?
I'm actually quite young. I'm 27 right now, so 90s, but the end of the 90s, so early
End of the
2000s. And
90s. Okay,
yeah,
okay, yeah. Uh, yeah. So little shift because I'm 1990, right? So I still have like vivid memory of the like 95 or something like this. You know, fake Coca-Cola in the shops and stuff, and all of the shit that was just coming, and and my father would work on the construction in Germany, so like the first like Haribo jellies and stuff that started coming, and and now it's like completely different. Not sure if you still sit in, right? Like,
yeah, no, I still visit. Actually, our entrance into the Cosmos scene was Gateway to Cosmos in Prague last year. But I still visit at least once a year. Yeah, I've memories too of fake brands, things tasting slightly differently. As a kid, being a bit confused by it. I think for me, it's also a little bit why I'm into decentralization and crypto this much, because obviously my family lost everything when they had to escape, and you kind of realize what
Mhm.
a repressive regime can do to the people in general. So I definitely grew up not with a left-wing communist upbringing, but exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
Get right, take care of yourself, don't trust your government entirely because it can flip from day to day.
Yeah, like it's nice to see like it's very different perspective for American, for example, right? But yeah, it still haunts me, when the supermarket started popping and the cheapest possible chocolate, probably like margarine based or so. It still haunts me to this day, the disgusting taste of that.
Yeah, I think
uh
a lot of people in the West, especially a bit of the like new age communists, don't realize how bad it was at the time actually, and how much they struggled. My grandparents had to bribe their concierge every single week trying to find some meat or chocolate because otherwise they would be put on a list and taken outside of the city to worse housing,
yeah,
or even worse than that, if you were marked as a troublemaker. My grandfather had that happen. He was marked as a troublemaker and sent to a camp for 2 years.
right,
So
yeah. It's interesting. Sorry that we starting from that, but
no problem.
um yeah, like I have some stories, from my parents, from the childhood of my mom. My town, like in my hometown, there was a lot of Russian soldiers stationing. So they had some like Russian shops, and they were like better equipped. So sometimes my mom would like dress pretending Russian to go there. And I think you had the same system. You had the monthly allowance of the amount of meat, right? Monthly allowance of the chocolate, and I think monthly allowance of alcohol. There was like, so you couldn't overdo the allowance. Of course, there
Yeah,
was.
doesn't people realize how small the allowance was, right? Like it's not a full bar of chocolate, it's a couple of cubes of chocolate for your entire family,
Yeah,
which you need to use to buy stuff, basically, not even for
yeah,
eating.
yeah.
Um,
I actually was in Prague in this event, Gateway to Cosmos. Um, I didn't know, so like because I was actually in my hometown staying there, and Prague is like 3 hours drive for me. I come from like Lower Silesia. Not so sure if you like, because Prague, like, it's less than 2 hours to the border from Prague, actually, to the Polish border up there. So I live like very close to the Czech border. So I drove to Prague to meet some of the people from the Cosmos ecosystem. I was very close with Juno back then. Not sure if you heard. So I met some of the people. It's a very nice event. Well, like, had really nice atmosphere, right? Um,
yeah, definitely. I thought it was a very well organized event. I think there, like the biggest eye opener was talking with Ethan Frey and Convio. This is kind of where we decided to show our Cosmos and VM that we built for the first time to him in the hacker
nice.
launch, and kind of give him an overview of the stuff we'd been doing in secret. So he was totally unaware that we'd done a full re-implementation based on the spec. So that's kind
Yeah.
of the moment we started showing some of our stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to him. Hopefully on this channel soon. I'm gonna get the chance. So, Karel, a little bit about you. Like, we know your background, your upbringing, and your parents from the communist regime. Um, when did you get to crypto? Like, if you can get the beginning, where you maybe in the Bitcoin days as well, maybe Ethereum, or
Yeah,
because you're CTO. Like, I'm not sure you're a tech person or also non-tech person, just like me.
no, I'm a very technical. Well, I'm
Oh,
a quite a technical person. I write many different programming languages. I consider
okay,
myself
all
quite
right.
good at Rust. I will say that in Composable, we have goblins that are far more technical than I am, but I do file PRs on a daily basis, do code reviews, follow different scientific papers, etc. So
Nice.
my background before I actually became the CTO of Composable, I was a tech lead at Composable, and I was offered the position after about 5 months of working at Composable. Before that,
Mhm,
I had a consultancy startup. I was doing a bit of work in the banking sector on what they were calling DLTs then, because blockchains
mhm,
were kind of forbidden words, as well as for some different protocols. I got into crypto early 2016. So I kind of missed on the very early Bitcoin days, although I was kind of tracking it and I had a few Bitcoin at that time. I wouldn't consider myself to really be in the crypto space
mhm,
then. Wasn't on the Bitcoin 4 hour or anything. And then 2016, I realized with Ethereum, like I could do some coding on top of it. And that to me
mhm,
kind of made sense. And that gauged my interest and I started getting into it. And then quite quickly, I realized, to be honest, from a financial perspective, that perhaps I'd kind of missed Ethereum because, like, well, I didn't participate in the ICO. I think it was $60 by then. So I was looking at some other ecosystems, thinking what else is going on. So I actually like got some Atom early on. I was following that because I liked the idea of running validators myself.
mhm,
So I ran a couple of validators in the early days on Lisk, Arc, Atom. I never did, but just to play around with the tech. So I had a couple of servers running on the side. And then besides that, I was tinkering around with smart contracts and kind of seeing how that went. And then obviously we had the whole ICO boom. I was very disappointed during that boom because I thought, all right, there's going to be these great products and things to do. But I think 2016, 2017, from a smart contract perspective, there wasn't that much to do on chain to write. Like you could
mhm.
mint an ERC20 token, but most of the projects didn't do much besides that. I think it got really interesting with Uniswap launching, to be honest. That's kind of, to me, the beginning of actually being able to do some fun stuff on chain. And since then, obviously, it's grown tremendously. Um, During those days, you had all these protocols trying to do bridging, but it took a long while for kind of Cosmos to make up on its promise of actually becoming this galaxy of chains, right? So
Mhm.
I think right now the crypto space is a lot more interesting if you're trying to build new cool stuff, way more options and things you can combine than back then.
Yeah, 2016 is still like very early, so I would like like I would call like late 2017 actively, but just buying the tokens. You mentioned Lisk, and Lisk was one of them.
Mm.
I think I bought $30. it's
Oh,
it's so funny because like those were like very promising blockchains, right? So I believe it was Lisk, there was Ardor, like
yeah.
I would buy some of them, and because of this ICO crash right after, it essentially kind of ruined a lot of other projects. But this time it seems much more healthier because there's like a lot of projects that actually have much more vibrant ecosystems, right? And but back then there wasn't even Cosmos, there was just ICO, but there wasn't it around, right? So
Yeah,
so
there's
you
like the Tendermint white paper, some docs about what they were going to build, but not much more than that, right? So definitely a bit of a gamble. Like, are these guys going to rug, or is this actually going to become
yeah.
something?
Was the well, you said you joined Composable. What was just before Composable? Were you working as the dev somewhere?
Just before Composable, I worked a little bit for Preview, but that was, I think, about 3 months doing some substrate engineering. Before that, I'd taken a brief sabbatical, and right before that, I was doing some work for ING in the Netherlands here with
Yeah.
their DLT division. Um, I still do some talks with them about every 6 months. I kind of go in and give
Mhm.
them an overview of what's happening in crypto. But with banks, to be honest, it's very boring work. Like, they usually have a couple of smart people that actually like do track along and try to build cool stuff, but those smart people can never get anything out there as a product because there's too many legal restrictions. They don't want to commit to it, so it's just
Yeah.
endless prototypes that are shelved all the time. So
Yeah.
it's not that great to work for multiple years in that sector.
Yeah. Um. You based overall in Portugal, right? Is it like ecosystem good? Because I wanted to ask actually, like, how's the Nether? I would imagine Netherlands has a lot of blockchain as well, or not really, or is that?
Yeah. Netherlands has a lot of blockchain. Definitely, like a couple of OGs are here, right? Like Satoshi Dice, etc. All founded here in the Netherlands.
Oh, wow.
There's the Dutch Blockchain Week, which is quite nice. I think ETH Amsterdam is pretty decent too.
Hmm.
But to me, like, it's not that difficult to travel between countries, right?
Yeah, it's
Flight to the
local.
Netherlands doesn't take me that long.
Yeah.
So for me, I've been in the Netherlands for 25 years, approximately of my life. So I'm kind of keen to kind of move to a different country just
Yeah.
to get a different scenery, get away from the uh, dreaded weather that we have here and the cold.
Oh, yeah.
Lisbon is quite good. Obviously, like, loads of people move to Lisbon. Also seeing loads of people move to Porto,
Hmm.
which is where I'm based. Definitely at the stage right now where if we go to kind of the fancier parties in Porto, then investors, etc., will kind of say that they're tired of crypto people coming in. So it's already quite a lot. But I think it's good for the country. Lisbon to me is a bit too busy in the summer and too hot, to be honest, to be
Right.
productive. In that sense, I
Um,
don't want too much screen glare, not too much heat in my home office. I need it to be comfortable for coding.
is it? But is it because of they have like favorable taxes? Because I actually spoke, like I was trying to research, and it wasn't that Portugal has favorable taxes. They are like just not regulated there. Is it, or it's
Mm,
actually?
They've got a golden visa deal.
Yeah.
So obviously, since I'm a European citizen, I don't need the visa, but the taxes are better than in the Netherlands. So that's a benefit for me. We also have a few people in Composable that are keen to moving. Some developers from the US who are sick
Right.
with the US becoming this conservative, right-wing, religious state. Some developers from the Middle East that are keen to
Uh-huh.
also move. So Portugal kind of offers us with a visa deal we can provide them, as well as
Right.
over the year and a half in Composable. Like, I like remote work. I think that's fine, but I think it's really nice to do remote work while being in the same city. So you can still
Yeah.
go for a beer on Friday and talk about new ideas, because without that, it's really hard to do that in just calls, right? If you have a call with 10 developers, it's not easy to have an open
Yeah.
discussion or be as creative as you can be.
Yeah. My friend was trying to move to Madeira, but he also found there are actually some taxes, so it's not really that easy. He eventually settled like in the Cyprus, which is
Mm.
like completely non-crypto, but just was but he was searching a lot about Portugal. Where's Composable Labs located overall? Not sure if you have a LLC or
At the moment, the LLC is based in St. Lucia, I think, or it's about to be. We've currently
right.
moved
Hmm.
it and constructed a new LLC. But to be honest, that's purely for tax benefits, right? Like if you
Mhm.
look at any company, you'll see that the actual location is different. We're planning to open a kind of permanent co-working space office in Porto. So to make that
Right.
our home base, this is where we do meetings with all of the leads as well. So about every 3 months, we meet up in real life to go through performance, but as well as ideation. And the last two sessions we've done in Porto, and we'll be continuing to do so. So
Mhm.
that's going to be our home base. Right now, I definitely say that we're European based because I
Mhm.
think about 80% of the people working Composable are in European time zones.
Yeah. Were you since the start in Composable as the developer?
No, I think I joined about 4 months after Composable went. The vision of
Right.
Composable changed a little bit too. The initial product that they were prototyping was a trusted bridge secured by multi-party computation. And over time, that vision kind of changed as we don't have that much faith in that level of centralization. So there were some really cool ideas for the UX and how the liquidity could work, but the underlying tech we kind of disagreed with. And so over the summer, the vision kind of pivoted away from Mosaic, which would be this centralized bridge, to just going all in on decentralized tech. And basically, at no point in the tech stack ever committing to having a centralized oracle or a centralized group of validators or a multi-sig for the bridging itself. We then went to look at like, all right, what protocol can we do? Because we had our designs like light client based, etc. And then we had a good look at ourselves and said, basically, IBC already is a protocol that does this, right? We're going to reinvent IBC with something that has the same security guarantees but a different interface. Why don't we just commit to IBC as a product and bring that to the Polkadot ecosystem and to the Ethereum ecosystem? And so that's kind of our bridging pillar that we have been committing to, and that's kind of this quarter and next quarter launching and going into production.
Yeah, I will want to ask more about this. Like the first thing, as we gonna get into a Composable, I need to compliment. I'm not sure who I'm complimenting, so whoever worked on that, please pass. Uh, Composable one has one thing that is absolutely number one in crypto, and it's the design and the graphics.
Uh,
It's the art, man. Like you know, just it is so beautiful. The font on the page,
that,
the
that that's
graphics
just
on the
that's
page,
just
the
one guy in our
branding.
company, Miguel, our head of product, a guy who is also, by the way, a refugee from Venezuela and now
Mhm.
lives in Berlin, who just does absolutely perfect design. He's the only designer I've ever worked with that is also a Figma master, right? Not just all right, slide or something, but it all works beautifully. He puts in so much effort. Perhaps we can leak the front ends for Centauri, our IBC bridge, because those look gorgeous as well with the designs he's done on that.
Man, this looks just beautiful. But so help me to understand, and some of my viewers, right? Composable is from what I understand, it will be like a tooling, right? It's the framework for building the DeFi applications, right? Interoperable.
No, it's a combination of basically three different products. So we have our bridging team, and they work on bringing IBC to different ecosystems. So
Mhm.
we now have working IBC within Polkadot and Kusama. So that way we can have the first trustless bridge between those two ecosystems.
Mhm.
Technically, they're the same chain. So this is kind of the problem of bridging between tendering chains. It's a bit easier, right? Because it's the same
Mhm.
tech. Then we have our Cosmos to parachain bridge, so Cosmos to Polkadot, Cosmos to Kusama, that is going into private testnet with public partners. So we're collaborating with Osmosis and Stride on that, and that's in the stage that we provide them with the Cosmos SDK modules for them to run a testnet, for us to do the testing of this bridge so we can put it to production.
Mhm.
Um, then we have our own parachain. where we have the Cosmos and VM on top, and some DeFi primitives. For example, the DEX. This DEX, for example, can function for fees. So bring your own gas, not needing to actually have
Yeah.
the token of the chain, but be able to do trades, as well as when you're routing. Let's say you're going from Cosmos to our parachain to near, right? And our
Hmm.
parachain is just intermediate up. You don't want to arrive at near without near tokens, because then
Hmm.
your wallet is stuck, right? You need something to
Yeah.
pay gas. So this DEX is kind of going to accumulate all L1 tokens and provide
Hmm.
liquidity for these bridging operations to make them possible. And then we have our XCVM team. And what they're doing is they're building a protocol on top of IBC to basically reduce the amount of round trips and provide developers with tools to build better cross-chain applications to do more complicated stuff. So
Right.
IBC is pretty low level overall. So we've taken a look at like what's needed to actually make it much easier to write a smart contract, um, and build outposts, satellites, etc., or do a smart contract that, for example, might trade on 10 different chains, depending on what the liquidity is on
Hmm.
each, and route to which one has your token available.
Okay. So Composable, is it LLC that has few different product offerings, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, so here is the first thing, because I wasn't really sure. Like, um, you seem focused a lot into uh, interoperability, right? And you seem like you have big focus into enabling, connecting to IBC and enabling IBC to wider ecosystem, which will include Polkadot and Near, I believe. And you have the parachain, and I understand the parachain is something that Polkadot has, and the parachains, I believe, are secured by the Polkadot, right? They function a certain way. So why Composable decided to build the parachain, um, instead of building their own independent sovereign chain with the set of validators?
So the security guarantees of a parachain are stronger because with IBC, what you verify is that the validators have finalized the next block, basically. But actually,
Hmm.
the context of the transactions are not verified in IBC. So you assume that the chain itself is still correct and that there hasn't been an attack on the overall validators itself, right? With Polkadot and parachains, the actual content of the transactions are checked as well. So in our case, if we did our own L1 and the validators would collude and maliciously fork the chain, that would be possible. With a parachain, that's not possible at all. Polkadot will prevent this from doing. Substrate as a framework, I like it more than the Cosmos SDK. Substrate refers to the Cosmos SDK a lot as well. Like I would consider it taking a lot of learnings from that and using that in Rust and kind of improving on top of it. We are, however, considering doing our own L1 that has
Hmm.
to do with bridging to Ethereum. Obviously, the gas price on Ethereum are a lot higher, and verifying 2,000 signatures for your
Hmm.
Cosmos validator set is going to be expensive in Ethereum. There's two approaches to solving this. Sprinkle in some ZK magic, which a lot of people are doing. Current
Hmm.
benchmarks show that you need about 60 of the biggest machines in AWS constantly producing proofs to stay up to date with one single Cosmos chain,
Hmm.
which is incredibly expensive, in the order of magnitude to 150K a month per bridge.
Hmm.
Obviously, you can decentralize this, right? Because it's not feasible for regular relayers to run this type of infrastructure. So you're then dealing with a centralized relayer, as well as that there are probably cheaper alternatives. One thing we're exploring right now is BLS signatures. And our current benchmarks show that those will cost us about $10 per block per synchronization of the light client.
Hmm.
But to do BLS signatures, we can be a parachain. We need to have an L1 for that. So right now we're prototyping on kind of this bridging L1 that is just used as the intermediary hop between Ethereum and other chains with its own validator set. There,
Hmm.
obviously, you need to account for that. Then we don't have this Polkadot relay chain security anymore. So we then need to build out this validator set and make sure that there's enough stakes to actually secure this properly, as we can no longer rely on other security guarantees.
Hmm.
And that is a big commitment, right? Because that means that you need to have a token for that. It's no longer just a utility chain with some properties. You need to build out this validator community. I do think it's good for the ecosystem, by the way. I think there's a much more vibrant validator community in Cosmos than there is in Polkadot at the moment.
Mhm.
So I think it's actually probably a really good opportunity with this L1 to kind of unify the validator communities and have them provide services, not just in the Cosmos ecosystem.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, also, but you mentioned, like, why would you build, because I felt like you at Composable, deliver products, and I couldn't really understand why you even need a blockchain, uh you know
Uh, so that's the case of building these IBC bridges is kind of like a matrix. So when we add
Mhm.
new ecosystem on top of it, we need to go back to all earlier ecosystem and implement that. With
Mhm.
our own chain, we can reduce the amount of implementations we need to do. And we can
Right.
actually connect to our chain and route traffic through it and still have the same level of security,
Mhm.
but have less work to do. Because one of these IBC implementations, they take approximately 6 months to do, perhaps
Mhm.
more. In Near, for example, we had to do Near improvement proposals, add new host functions, discuss about their consensus and how they store state, etc. It's a pretty long trial to do so. So if you actually want to ship products in the next 3 years, you need to allow for this. As well as there's some other stuff we have planned for our own chains, product-wise, related to XCVM, our protocol, and bridging optimizations that perhaps we could
Mhm.
do with smart contracts, but there's some cool stuff you can do with your own chain since you can guarantee certain transactions are executed. Well, this is a smart
Yeah.
contract. You're never guaranteed to get execution.
I want to talk a little bit about bridging, because you mentioned building bridges, and you
Hmm.
don't really mention building IBC clients. Um, because what I always hear in relation to Composable is that or rather in the relation to Polkadot, that there will be enabled IBC client to Polkadot, while you are saying that there will be a bridge from.
We use those interchangeably. So the fundamental work we do is writing IBC clients, writing new backends for IBC. So ICS8, for example, allowing WASM Lite clients in the Cosmos SDK palette for IBC module. That's the work that we do. So
So
the
is the
bridging,
is the bridge that you are building is the actual IBC? Will I
yeah,
be
it is.
able? So okay, I will be able to have native dot on Cosmos. It's is
Yeah,
correct.
denominated by IBC, obviously. So still with the channel semantics, etc. But yeah, it's a full like IBC implementation. The Cosmos chain doesn't really know if it's communicating with another Cosmos chain or with dot. And so in this case, yeah, it's native dot that you can have on Osmosis or
It is
uh,
not wrapped. Is it correct? There's.
IBC is a very low level implementation in Cosmos as well, does perform wrapping. Um,
Mhm.
so that's just part of the IBC spec itself, and that's for the security of the system itself, because that means that if one chain has a bug that suddenly mints 10 times the amount of bridge tokens, that the other chain can detect this. But to the end user, it's not wrapping, and I would say there's no security risk to this, right?
So
When you
so
use
in the bridge there is no dot that is being locked up there, or there
No, with
is.
IBC, you have locking. So IBC itself works with having a vault on one side that locks the tokens and then minting them on the other side. So that's the wrapping operation that happens.
Mhm.
And that's the same for our semantics. So we just follow the official ICF standards here.
So I understand. Like, it's still like there is still the risk of exploit of the bridge. Is it correct? Um,
Yeah,
and then your IBC token become worthless.
but that's the case for if you were to burn and mint as well, obviously, because if you can get access to the mint side without burning, then you can exploit it too. So this is more of a fundamental property. It's the same with a regular ERC transfer, right? If you got an exploit in ERC20 and when you transfer, you add to someone's balance, but you don't subtract to someone else, you've got an exploit. There's always the risk with code, right? We had the um, IVL bug in the Golang Merkle tree implementation IBC a couple of months ago that technically made like IBC susceptible that they fixed, right? So that's just the case of technology. Like you always have risks with
I
technology.
understand, but this is very interesting, because what I hear on the Cosmos side all the time is that one, like, that we have other chains connected to IBC and we don't need bridges. which is like completely different rhetoric now. Um,
I feel like this is perhaps going into like marketing talk versus actual technical talk, right? I consider IBC a bridge, right? And it has a certain protocol.
mhm,
IBC, I consider that a trustless bridge because there's no set of validators or authority. XLR is a trusted bridge because it has a set of validators that is an authority that makes decisions. They synchronize that with a blockchain, but in the end, it's a very
mhm,
fancy multi-sig bridge. Wormhole is a less fancy multi-sig bridge
mhm,
because they don't perform certain gas optimization, but I categorize them in the same box. And then
mhm,
you have IBC, which is true code is law, etc., which is kind of the highest level of security we can do at the moment with bridging
mhm,
overall. Um, but that's just for basically getting bytes from one chain to another chain, right? And then on top of getting those bytes, you need to have semantics with how you deal with
mhm.
tokens. IBC also has standards for how you deal with tokens, and the standard is lock them up on one side, mint a
And
wrapped asset on
yeah.
the other side, and you're good to go. The risk, obviously, with the wrapped asset in IBC, it's much lower than with XLR or Wormhole. So the risk of actually depegging or the underlying going away
Mhm,
is orders of magnitude smaller. But you still share the same risks in both implementations, which is what if the code is bad, right? What if you miss an if statement, etc. But that's the same
right.
case for blockchains themselves, right? That's just the inevitability of codes itself. But assuming that the code follows the spec, IBC is secure and cannot really be rugged even
Mhm,
by the implementers of IBC, right? So once we have these bridges live, we as Composable can't really take them down or do something malicious with them anymore, which is a really nice property, I think, to have if you cycle back to us saying, like, you need to be wary of governments and what actually can happen. If your bridge is secured by 50 validators all located in the US, obviously it's quite easy to
mhm,
actually just send some CIA agents over. Or if your bridge is secured by an international group, it's quite easy to have
mhm.
North Korean spies come over and tap your home, perform a man-in-the-middle attack,
Yeah.
and try to get control of those 50 validator keys.
Mhm. Um, it's very interesting what you say, because so like if I keep, like, let's say, it's exactly the same will be for me if I will keep my dot tokens on Cosmos chain as I keep my osmosis tokens on Cosmos chain. Yeah, is, or there will be.
Yeah. No, that'll be perfectly fine and secure.
Yeah.
What we're implementing as well on top, that's the XCVM part that we're doing, is basically allowing you to keep your dot tokens on the Cosmos chain, but still interact with dot chains and
but
interact with protocols over there.
but then the bridge itself from Composable, right, to the IBC is essentially that's where the danger lies. Is it correct? Or
So if you were to like assess where are the different risks, the risks is on the chain that we're connecting to, because that
Mhm,
chain needs to have relatively correct code, right? And that works. And that's basically the Go Cosmos SDK module that handles IBC. That one
mhm,
we built in collaboration with the ICF. We've got a grant for that, and we work together with Strangelove on implementing that correctly. We have our Rust-based Tendermint Lite client. We build that in collaboration with them too. That's the security component that is on our chain.
mhm,
And those are kind of your risk factors there. If we get those correct, then the bridging itself is correct. So yeah, we work with auditors, with
mhm,
original implementers of IBC to get this right.
mhm. Would you say, because like often in the Cosmos ecosystem we have this rhetoric, that one day Ethereum will enable IBC client, and that is essentially the end of all bridges, and I want to, like, because obviously as someone from the Cosmos ecosystem, I understand that might be the reality might be a little bit bent, and it might not be necessarily that easy. So um you, as the highly technical person, is such that, does there exist such possibility, or we more likely will be relying on the bridges that we have today, right? So the example, maybe you heard Gravity Bridge. There is also Axelar, right? The Axelar rely on the multi-sig, the Gravity on the set of validators, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
do you think there is end of these bridges, or no, we are we gonna rely on the bridges regardless?
No, I definitely think there's going to be an end to trusted bridges because we've already seen, like with this crash, that all semi-centralized DeFi protocols fail as well, right?
Hmm.
Everything to do with pre-AC, etc. And I think every single cycle we see that centralized protocols fail, and that actually pure trustless DeFi protocols do quite well and actually can continue to operate and truck along. So I have a feeling that basically crypto needs to become more decentralized at every single step because these centralized protocols will fail at some point. And that is just not something that we can build a $1 trillion infrastructure on,
Hmm.
right? It's fine to have a bridging hack of 100 million, it hurts, but in the big spectrum of like traditional finance, 100 million isn't that much. Like a high frequency trader could lose that in a day and still continue operating. What we need to do, obviously, is build a financial system that can handle clients like BlackRock, which need to deal with trillions of dollars. And for that, the bridging hacks we've seen so far are just absolutely unacceptable. Like we're centralized bridges are a swamp, and we can't build a proper home on top of it. So for us to continue progressing, we'll need these decentralized bridges. Ethereum itself will never I think support like a native IBC Lite client written in Go because the Ethereum philosophy is that like the Go portion itself is like purely for consensus and the EVM, and
Hmm.
all application stuff on top is in Solidity. But that means that we don't actually need to collaborate with Ethereum to do this IBC client. So we have in prototype right now an Ethereum IBC client. Like we can verify the BLS signatures, and we're currently working on the IBC semantics themselves. There it's really the case of can we make it cheap enough to actually
Hmm.
like be feasible, right? Because if every single transfer would take 1K, nobody would use this, even though it's really secure. Needs to be relatively competitive with these current trusted bridges for us to use this. And currently it looks like this is feasible, where we can go to having a $10 flat cost per block, and then some optimizations to not need to process every single block. So I think we actually will see an IBC client this year to Ethereum.
Hmm. Um, yeah, that's in like because I would also like say like maybe we'll not see the the native IBC client to Ethereum. Maybe we stick with the bridges. What I also see, right? I wonder if you have solution to that. The bridging is very expensive. Um, and for the most popular bridge now, maybe not most popular, there's two bridges that are most popular for Cosmos. There's Gravity, which Canto, for example, uses. You can fork it. And there is this more centralized, which is Axelar. And it's very expensive, actually. I believe Axelar pays $8 for the single transaction. Like, is it viable? And can we potentially make these bridges very fast and cheap at the same time? Is
I
there?
think it's going to be a race to the bottom. Obviously, building these bridges is expensive, right? So
Uh-huh.
from the side of the implementers, we do a 30 to 40 million investment in tech to build this. We do
Mhm.
need to recoup this at some point. But I suspect that over time, with more connections being live and more trusted bridges going there and more traffic, the prices will lower, basically, as you get competing offerings. It's kind of the same as international transfers between banks, right? It
Mhm.
used to be that you had to pay money for it, and there's still companies that charge a lot, like Western Union. But over time, this actually goes down a lot. With native clients, you can kind of subsidize it from the chain's perspective, right? So charge less gas for the actual operation, which is what we do on our parachains and what Cosmos chains do. On the Ethereum side, you're going to be limited into that you at least need to pay for the gas that Relayer
Mhm.
is doing, plus a small profit to make it like financially feasible to do so. And that just really depends on the Ethereum gas prices and the underlying implementation. But
Mhm.
I, however, do feel like paying $10 and not lose 10K in a bridging hack is probably worth it over paying a few cents and 3 months later having shit tokens that are now worth zero because my token
Mhm.
depacked.
Yeah.
So but yeah, it's a difficult call. It's definitely like as tech progresses, we'll see improvements.
I really like that you brought the BlackRock because I like to speak it in relation to stable coins. Like I've been feeling that the biggest play in crypto is essentially stable coins. Because it's great for customer like BlackRock. to get exposure to this via investing to Circle, and then earn like 2 or 3% yields just on people's bank deposits, and get exposure to like potentially few $1 trillion markets, right? Like that's very promising for someone like BlackRock, which is also a little bit sad for the crypto because that's who will be the big crypto players, right? Because those are very powerful entities that will want to get exposure to this ecosystem.
Yeah.
um
But I'm a big believer in free markets. So to me, if you do what you do well, then you should make more money, right? So even in
Mhm.
crypto with decentralization and everybody starting out at exactly the same level, we'll see like parties arise that have way more money than others because they make way better trades, etc.
Mhm.
What to me is unacceptable is if you go to the top because you're shielded by the government, right? What banks have. They're capable of doing risky investments, making great returns, but there's no downside to it because if their investment goes bad, they'll be bailed out. And so to me, crypto is kind of the solution to saying, well, if you make bad investments, you go broke. There is no bailout. If you make good investments, you go to the top. But we have to acknowledge that crypto in the end is going to be like the base layer for all finance, and that means it needs to accommodate these really large players as well. I
Mhm.
think it's better to have these large players in crypto so that they basically have the same rules as we have, instead of them being outside of crypto with their own set of rules, bailouts, lower fees,
Mhm.
minimum pay to play, right? Like there's a whole category of options and derivatives that you can only purchase if you have over 1 billion. And
Mhm.
so these really big players basically have access to better financial assets than we do, simply because they've got more money. And where does this money come from? Usually an investment from a pension fund. So in the end, it's still our money that's enabling them to basically outcompete our own portfolios. To me, that situation is unacceptable. So I want to draw all of that into crypto and make sure that at least they abide by the same rules that we do.
Yeah, I really like this view because it's very hopeful. Because what I understand that what many people would say, hey, in the capitalism, in the free market, the large corporations win, but you say they win because they're actually shielded by the government, and that's not free market. But you say in crypto, even though those big players come, at the end they might not really be big players because we enable the real one. We know the government will not be able to shield them, and someone else could become, right, large.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
if you write a really great MEV bot or you find like a new arbitrage opportunity, you could make a few 100 million in a month, right? If you have this new idea and you can do this purely because you're deaf behind the computer and you figured out a new algorithm.
Mhm.
In traditional markets, you can't really. Like at some point, they're going to say you're not allowed to trade this much. You don't have the pedigree. You need to have certain
Mhm.
licenses to access this market, and they shield you from doing this. So
Mhm.
crypto will allow new people to rise to the top, and perhaps it'll turn out that a lot of current big players actually aren't that great at what they're doing, right? I worked a bit for ING. I think Dutch banks in general, they're not that great at investing, to be honest. They lose against the S&P 500, and they provide like all of these packages with their fund managers, better strategies, and they charge a fee on top of this. They sell that to pension funds, and in the end, they're worse than just what the regular Reddit investor on fire would do. And to me, that means that they should basically be failing and going broke, right? Because they're getting outcompeted by just random citizens.
Well, the banks can lose money and still be profitable because they have the license on creation of money, which is that's the issue, right? So we can speak about this as we go into DeFi, because this is like, hey, DeFi can't compete with that. Like DeFi, DeFi protocol cannot just do deposit 5 million USDC based on the based on nothing, and this customer will pay back 5 million plus USDC back based on the code that you both agree with the click, right? Like that's undoable. And I'm like, no, banks won this game. Like they, because banks can deposit to Carol 5 million, dollars if they want. Um,
Which is
and
a whole discussion if that's a good thing or not, because this is like their riskless investment, right? If I don't pay back my investment, they have the opportunity to get bailed out, right, by the government, because if they deposit this to 1 million carols and all of us don't pay back, they will be bailed out for this. So they've got a clear advantage over a private lender, for example. And obviously, like, I'd love to have a banking license and be able to do this deal, right? Because it's a no-brainer. It's totally free money that they can be making here. Not only that, they're legally gatekeepers, so there really aren't alternatives. You have to work with them. So they've got this perfect position right now. They lobbied for years to get into this position, right? The lawmakers don't understand how finance really works. And so the banks have this total monopoly. They've convinced us all that it's really complex what they're doing. But let's be honest, it's not that complex. Managing funds, borrowing money, lending money, it's feasible. And then they build these whole structures that are basically like houses of cards, right? That collapse periodically, but somehow they're not to blame for this. I feel that's a whole discussion about, like, should we actually have the IMF? Should we have a debt-based society? Is actually what we're setting up right now a good financial system? Well, I kind of disagree with some of those points as well.
Yeah, that's what you said about like banking. That yeah, it's not complex. They essentially got a lot of power just because the license, right? The license of creation of money, because that's that's you build some of DeFi applications, so maybe it's good time to touch. I think so. You have Picasso, and I understand the Picasso is some tooling to build your own DeFi solutions. Is it correct? So I could use Picasso to build my own DEX. I could use Picasso to build maybe my own lending borrowing protocol.
No,
Correct?
that's incorrect. Picasso is our parachain. So it's a blockchain that you can build
Right.
stuff on top. Picasso has a couple of native modules, so it resembles a Cosmos SDK chain, as well as we're launching our Cosmos VM once the audit is completed on top of Picasso, and that'll allow you to build cooler stuff. And obviously, the play that we're going to do here is, because we're launching our bridges first connected to Picasso, that it's a really nice location to build an outpost for Stride, for example, because the connection from to near the IBC connection, the first implementation will be Picasso to near, and obviously there's an implementation from Picasso to Stride. So Picasso is a really good location for liquid staking products to combine different L1s, for example. So we kind of want that to be a routing hub, as well as a hub where different protocols can place their outposts to do some of their DeFi operations.
So is it like and sorry for being very ignorant. So is it Composable is parachain and also Picasso is parachain? That's two separate things, two separate. Okay.
Yeah, because sorry,
Mhm.
go ahead.
And Picasso will be secured by its own token, and I understand Composable will be secured by its own token, and Picasso is more focused on the DeFi itself, right? Like the financial
Yeah,
instruments. Yeah.
the history behind this is quite funny, but basically Polkadot has a test network, Kusama, and it had a test token that was valued at about 1 cent. And in the previous crazy bull market, that went all the way up to $500. So it's
Yeah,
not
I
really
know.
it's not really a test network anymore because it secures real value. Kusama has some advantages, which is it's about technology-wise a year ahead of Polkadot. So all of the new stuff related to consensus and light clients is available first on Kusama. So Picasso is our Kusama parachain, Composable is our Polkadot parachain,
Right.
and we simply need to wait longer before we can roll out stuff on Composable because it's the parachain itself and the relay chain are behind compared to Kusama. On the other hand, obviously Composable has access to better liquidity and better security, right? Because the Polkadot chain is more valuable and secures more. So that's kind of the dichotomy of our two chains.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn a little bit. I'm trying to open, and I see the application. I believe that was built by Composable Pablo, which is the DEX, which is built on Picasso, right? This was built by your own team, correct?
Yeah. Don't look too much at that front end. We built that over Christmas in
Right.
Spain. We're actually rolling out a complete update of the front end. The soft deadline is today, I think sometime next week.
There is not really many tokens as well. I can see it's Picasso, it's USDC, and there's USDT, and there's Kusama USDT. It's gonna be more vibrant than this.
It
Um,
is. So with the next IBC bridge launch, there's going to be a dot as well on top of it, because that's the
mhm,
connection to the dot pair chain. And
mhm,
then there's obviously going to be the IBC connection to the Cosmos ecosystem. So actually,
mhm,
the amount of tokens that we have on this chain is limited by the amount of bridges and will grow, as well as once we have the Cosmos and VM that will allow third-party developers to build their own protocols with tokens on top.
mhm. And as of now, I can only use Polkadot wallet that I don't know. I never even used because I'm so
Mhm.
Cosmos. But I expect you also gonna support Kepler, I believe. Are there other wallets that you be supporting?
So we're looking into Kepler support, but obviously we built our chain on top of Substrate. So our RPCs are different. So we basically need to either provide different RPCs. You already have API access to Pablo, guys. The front end uses it, so you can use that. But the Kepler wallet itself, we need to do quite a bit of work to support that, as well as I think Kepler charges 300K a year, something in that order of magnitude for your chain to be supported. So we need to go through it. Ideally, we'd love to support that, right? Or to be honest, like one wallet that supports Polkadot, Near, Ethereum, and Cosmos, right? Because as we have all of these IBC connections, I
Mhm.
myself would prefer not to need 4 wallet extensions to operate on all of them, but one super wallet
Yeah.
that you can use for all of it.
So here's my question because um, maybe you talk to other Cosmos projects. Did they maybe connected to you that hey, we built wallet and we want this connection, or maybe you guys at Composable are planning to release your own wallet that will support also other net like there will be Cosmos near and dot. Not sure if you can tell, but curious.
Yeah, I can't really call this an alpha drop yet because we only have it in internal discussion. And Miguel, our head of product, the designer, really, really wants to do a super wallet. It's his total pet project. So, but I can do a commitment on this, right? But it is something that we desperately want to do. Like all of us really want to build a wallet that just connects everything, basically. But we'd love to collaborate with people too, right? So if people share this vision, we don't want to build every single product out there and provide everything on our own, right? What we want is to have a good product for every use case. And if something exists already, like we did with IBC, we want to adopt that. But right now, there's not really this really convincing super wallet solution for all
Mhm.
ecosystems. It just doesn't
Right.
exist out there. There's not a party we can really collaborate with on this. So for people listening, if this excites you, reach out to us. But that's what I think it needs for the next bull market, right? For this whole like IBC future, trusted future,
Yeah.
any chain, any money, we need a super wallet.
100% agree. I'd love to have in one wallet dot near. I never used it, but I imagine I'm gonna actually use this ecosystem once this IBC. I will have IBC connection, right? I heard a lot of great stuff about them. Never used. It's quite annoying for the users to use 5 different wallets for each ecosystem, right? It's not fun. But I was laughing a little bit because we so Kepler, I assume over time the Kepler will lose role a little bit, um because like hey, it's expensive. I know many projects plan to build their own wallet, and we also have in Cosmos, not sure been follow a little bit of name service fights. And I was
Mm-hmm.
laughing because I imagine once you have super wallet supporting different, it makes it even worse. Like, could we have one unified name service across all the networks to make it easy, or we still be jumping from the name service to name service? I'm not sure if you thought about this, but this really brings
Yeah,
so much issues.
obviously, the moment we talked about super wallet, we talked about super name service as well, right? Because if you're connected to all these, yeah, of course, like this is all of the what we call the Degen talk every Friday that we have with the goblins. Like once we have all of this, what's the next stage of what we can do with it? But I don't want to like set weird expectations. We haven't committed to doing this yet,
Mhm.
but this is what we talk about when we meet up in real life to build on top of it. To me, it's kind of going a bit back to the philosophical thing. it's the future where, as long as all chains are equally secure, right, with deterministic finality, you shouldn't need to know what protocol is on what chain anymore, right? Like, who cares that Pablo is on a substrate-based chain and Osmosis on a Tendermint-based chain? We need to start thinking about like the applications themselves, and not about, oh shit, this is Cosmos chain, I need to switch to a Cosmos wallet, etc. And with like a super wallet and super apps, we can kind of reach that future. Because we don't think about what data center we connect to, right? Like, we don't travel to Europe and think, ah, fuck, to connect to Telegram, I now need to connect to a European data center, etc. That's handled for us. But with chains, we have this weird thing that the applications are relatively similar, but we still have this like mental overhead of needing to know what is the underlying tech that this application was built upon. And that to me is killing to UX, right? Like, that's what preventing this big in-stream of people, because my mom doesn't want to know about Cosmos or Polkadot. She might be interested in like DeFi yield opportunities, like that she gets, but not about why like the Cosmos ecosystem might be better or the Near ecosystem might be better. She doesn't want to know. So for this influx of like 200 million new users, we need to abstract the underlying tech away.
Yeah. Like, so I'm looking at your page, and I'm even looking at the graphics on your page, and they're like such a great explanations there. Because, for example, when I'm looking at your bridging Centauri technology, and below you have like simple presentation of that dot moving from one side to other, and that makes people, okay, I know how this one works, because like I mean, for others would be maybe this dot would be stopped and then another appeared on the other side, and that like really nice presentation. Like, so like everyone should like probably go to composable.finance, because you can read more there. Wanted to ask, so you have the Picasso is one, you will have your decks. What other do you build any other apps on the Picasso, maybe beyond, or like you more focused, you want to more give this like open source code to people to develop, and you counting on this?
So we have for Pablo 3 major next features coming out. One is incentives. The next one is stable swap, and then we've just
Nice.
finished like the prototype for concentrated liquidity as well. So we basically want that to just be a modern DEX that provides the basics that everybody needs and expects. Then what we've got going is collator staking. Validators work differently in the parachain ecosystem than they do in the Cosmos ecosystem, because we have the Polkadot security. So in general, we don't need as many tokens to be staked, etc. But at the same time, there's still the risk of censorship. So we actually do want a large validator community to ensure that the transactions aren't censored by a smaller set. And collator staking is going to allow Cosmos validators to come in and run our nodes as well, and for them to provide these services. As well, it's going to provide a way for users to separate out their governance token from their reward token, and basically still be able to participate themselves in on-chain governance without needing to delegate that to the validator, and choose basically the same DPoS model of top validators. And that's going to allow, I think, third parties to do some cool stuff. Like, I've been trying to pitch to some of my friends that they should be building a DAO that validators can use to get predictable votes and pay perhaps a higher reward rate to the DAO, and then have like a set of good validators that perhaps get a good review from Gadikian that they do hold their own keys and haven't shared that with someone, and then allow for like DeFi protocols on top of the very simple validator staking. And I think that's something that's a little bit missing in the Polkadot ecosystem, that has a lot of opportunity for people wanting to build stuff.
Someone asking if they can buy already Picasso token. There is the you have Pika token available on Pablo, right?
Yeah, you can buy it on Pablo, or you can wait. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to tell which exchanges we're talking with at the moment. I don't think I'm allowed to say, but we're talking with multiple exchanges to be listed within the next 2 months. So for now,
and
it's
those exchanges also will be within the Cosmos ecosystem. Yeah,
no. So we're talking with centralized exchanges at the moment for listing, and I think once we have the IBC bridge to Osmosis, we want to be listed on Osmosis, obviously ASAP. So that's
And sorry for throwing it here. Like obviously Ethan Frey, right? They just
Mhm.
they also build wind decks. Not sure if you heard, which is like also
Yeah.
thinking there, or you would rather focus on one decks in the Cosmos ecosystem, or you think it's good to be everywhere?
No, I think it's good to be everywhere, to be
Yeah,
honest. As an
yeah. So
interoperability maxi, nothing is more annoying than realizing that some token isn't available somewhere. So I
yeah,
think being listed on more dexes is always going to be beneficial.
yeah.
And the market itself will decide which DEX has the most liquidity, right? So they can compete as long as we're listed everywhere, we're good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So guys, like, I'm not gonna instruct you on like how to buy Pablo. I don't know it, because it can go to advice. Download the Polkadot wallet, connect there, like get some Kusama or USDT on Kusama, and then you can swap. That's correct, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's all.
you can also join our Discord. Our CMs can help you out. We've got some user guides because definitely we're in the early stages of building this product. So the UX of the entire bridging system isn't as perfect as it is. Over time, that'll get much
Mhm.
better without you needing to sign multiple transactions on different chains to forward your tokens. But for now, you still need to.
That did Composable was planned since the start to no, it wasn't since the start, right? Regarding its virtual machine, the choice of the virtual machine, right? So Composable will have the Cosmos virtual machine, or it's like gonna be multiple, right? Because
No, just cause I'm awesome.
right.
I think about this time last year, a bit earlier, I think November last year, we were basically deciding on which one, Move, EVM. I dislike the EVM VM itself as well as Solidity quite a bit. I don't think it's a really nice VM implementation wise. We looked at Ink, which is Parity's wasn't
Sorry,
VM.
you said you don't like EVM.
Dislike. I don't like it.
Dislike. Yeah, yeah. I was like, because from everyone who built Cosmos, they're like, I hate EVM. So
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. No. So we had to decide basically between a WASM based VM and there
Mhm.
was Ink and CosmWasm. We had to look at the implementations of both and also the semantics of the VMs themselves. And we just liked the implementation of CosmWasm a lot more. The code was higher quality in general, as well as that we
Mhm.
liked the semantics a lot more of how the system actually operates. Um, we then had to basically rebuild it because our entire chain is in Rust. And the CosmWasm VM itself is half Go, half Rust, and we couldn't really compile that to WebAssembly itself. So we did a full implementation from scratch. It's kind of fun because we found some bugs in CosmWasm itself in the reference implementation because we did a re-implementation of everything. So it's a
Nice.
really good check as well
Yeah.
on the ecosystem. So filed some PRs to get that fixed. And now we have what we think is a really high quality VM for our own chain that is exactly CosmWasm compatible that we can do other cool stuff with as well. So for the developers here, we can actually like compile the VM itself to WebAssembly, so we can run it in the browser and play around with it. It's exactly the same VM as is running on chain. We can create really nice testing scenarios. So we have got some tests for XCVM, our protocol, where we in memory spin up basically 10 CosmWasm chains and can do complicated test scenarios on top of them without actually running 10 nodes behind the scenes. So it's really lightweight, a really good developer experience. So far, really happy with it. Ethan Frey and Simon Warta have been super helpful and friendly overall. We talked a lot with them. Right now, I think CosmWasm, with the docs being taken down, is a little bit in a weird place for new developers coming in. So we're
Mhm.
talking with Will Chen and Larry, etc., to kind of see if we can create a working group and basically take over that part of CosmWasm and make it a community-owned project because we obviously need CosmWasm developers and more of them. And I think
Mhm.
the Cosmos ecosystem needs more CosmWasm developers as well.
Is there, because I'm completely non-tech person. I might try to understand the concepts on the surface. Is there any difference between your Cosmos and the Cosmos that exists, for example, on Juno, or the building experience for developers is exactly the same?
No, so the building experience is exactly the same. So that's what I mean by RVM is CosmWasm compatible. If you compile a contract for Juno, then you can deploy it on RVM. Obviously, the actual engine under the hood is different, right? But that's not observable from developers, because what we needed was a different engine for our chain, but we wanted the same like interface for them to use. There's some differences because we have different modules, but that is already included in CosmWasm. Like if chains have their own custom modules, you can call those. So we, just like Juno, just like Osmosis, have a different set of modules that you can call it to, such as Pablo.
Yeah. Would you say that the Composable, when out, is in somehow direct on in or indirect competition to other protocols like Juno or Neutron that will be secured, for example, by the hub? Uh,
We'll see. Two discussions. So the shared security from the hub is a lower security level than in Polkadot. That's my hard take. But just from a pure technical perspective, what you get from Polkadot is a stronger security guarantee than you get from the hub. But I don't consider that a competitor or competitive advantage necessarily, because it's more about the product that you support. I think the nice thing about Interchain is that in the end, we want everybody to be successful, right? If we're connected to 10 chains and all of them suck, then there's no value in those connections, right? We have our own DEX, but we prefer Osmosis to be a very vibrant DEX too, because that provides arbitrage opportunities for people, which means more transactions, more traffic, more yield for LPs, etc. We don't want to connect to chains with DEXs without liquidity, because why would you connect to them? There's no reason for it. So actually we want 10 competitors that are all doing really well, connect to all of them, and that provides all of the users with all of these things to do: arbitrage opportunity, trade opportunities, bots, LPs. That's also how you get these bridging fees lower, right? If you're the only decent chain, you can basically monopolize and keep the fees high. If you connect to good competitors, then you kind of will need to drop your fees, because they might be dropping their fees to attract traffic, which in total improves the system. Free market is very good at optimizing systems in this way, as long as you keep it really free.
Yeah, amazing. So I had the question and kind of was looking again at your page. I hear a lot of voices from Juno communities and Neutron that there is not enough CosmWasm developers. And I wonder if Composable now is facing the same problem. Guys, we don't have enough developers. Are you trying to steal developers from the other ecosystems as well, messaging them, or there are actually developed, because we have Terra ecosystem, right? That's CosmWasm. They probably have the most still, I would say. Maybe I'm wrong, but someone told me that there is still most Cosmos developers is in Terra. Obviously, some on Juno, some Neutron. I imagine Composable has. Is there really shortage of Cosmos developers?
The reality is there's just a shortage of developers in general. No matter what category you look for, there's a shortage of Rust developers, Substrate developers. There's a shortage of creative people that are passionate and want to build cool stuff. In general, what I'm seeing is people relatively inexperienced in programming, but really passionate, can pick it up and build really cool stuff. Doesn't matter if you're really experienced, if you're not passionate and you don't want to build something nice, nothing nice will come from it. Well, like once we have 1,000 CosmWasm developers, we'll complain about not having 10,000. And once we have 10,000, we'll complain about not having 100,000. I don't really like direct poaching. I'm not sure if RBD is talking with different teams. I'm sure they are, right? Because that's part of the game. But to me, I think it's more important to invest in the CosmWasm Academy, invest in training new developers. I think Rust itself as a language, I think 7 or 8 years in a row, it scored as the most loved language on Stack Overflow. I think it's a really compelling language to pivot to if you don't know it yet as a developer. I think CosmWasm is a really nice programming experience as well. So it's not like we're trying to convince developers to move to something very niche that they're going to hate. The feedback that I get from people that have learned Rust is that they like their job much more and are much happier. So I think as long as we stay a welcoming community and we provide these ecosystems for new developers to come in, they will come.
Are you saying something, because I really liked what I heard from you, that even if someone is not experienced but really passionate, um are you even like at Composable looking for this type of people, for like, are you
Yeah,
hiring inexperienced developers as well? Like, I'm asking because I wonder, maybe person like this is listening, right, and they never heard of Composable, so like, just,
yeah, we
yeah.
have a kind of an internal budget with how many junior developers will accept. I think our last two junior developers has basically graduated to now being intermediate developers, and they're actually
Hmm.
really good. So we kind of have some slot openings. It really depends on the position, but never be afraid to contact and reach out. There can always be hybrid positions, right? I think, for example, learning to program and doing dev relations can be a really good combination because you have the time to not need to build production code, but learn how a product works.
Hmm.
And I think overall, being a developer is about learning new things all the time. People often think that developers are magical beings that just see matrix code in front of them. That's not the case. Developers spend countless hours learning new things. When you ask them, can you build this? They'll say yes, but the real answer is, I've got no clue. Let me read the docs and see how it works.
Hmm.
And maybe it'll take me 5 hours, maybe 100 hours. I can't tell yet. But that's because they're willing to like learn, right? And to dive
Hmm.
into something new. So if you have that attribute, you'll most likely be a good developer.
Hmm. Nice. Like, I know when the Terra collapsed, are you still okay with time to continue
I've got
going?
about 5 to 10 minutes left.
Nice. Uh, okay. When there was Terra, you also try to provide some grants for some projects where you're able to get some really nice developers from there. And is there any? Can you give the number how much funds you spent on acquiring those projects and these developers?
So in general, like our grants range between I think about 5K to 30K depending on the work done. We're working together with a couple of Cosmosm projects at the moment, so it has been fruitful. Um, in general, my opinion is that like grants need to have like pretty close milestones and something achievable for existing products. That works better. I'm not a very big fan of doing grants for something that's far ahead in the future because you never know what happens in crypto. um, I think a very successful grant we did was for a static analysis tool for
Hmm.
Substrate. That guy has done a tremendous amount of work for, to be honest, a relatively small grant because it excites him. The next thing we're going to do is the same for Cosmosm. So just to improve overall
Hmm.
contract security for developers. And that's where I'm kind of keen to invest in a bit more. And for the attracting developers to build DeFi protocols, I think the best strategy there just is to have a good core product, a good vision, right? Because you're investing as a developer in an ecosystem, building your stuff on top. So the ecosystem needs to
Hmm.
progress and have a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year vision, and then providing them with opportunities to make their product useful immediately. Nobody likes building a product that's only going to be useful in 2 years. So you want to create
Hmm.
some opportunities for them, some low-hanging fruits that just make sense, that you almost want to grab yourself, right? I want to build stuff where I go, oh shit, if I didn't work for Composable and had 40 hours a week to spend coding, I would be building this right now on top
Hmm.
of our chain. And so we're trying to kind of create some of these opportunities for people.
And I see you continue running the grant program, right? And these grants, what are the size of these grants, if you mind to share? Like, just curious. Is there a
Really
cap?
depends. Usually the size is between 5 to 30K,
The same, yeah.
but we've done larger grants. We've worked with Strangelove on the IBC stuff. They received a 300K grant from us, but there was a 1 year collaboration
Right.
that's still ongoing, by the way, so a pretty large amount of effort. So it really depends on what you're proposing to do.
Amazing. Like, I'm really interested with about this because I feel a lot of projects in Cosmos don't know how to do grants, and I read about a lot of projects. You say 3 to 50. I see many projects, even large, have capped at 100K, right? And then I would go to like some small project and learn that they gave away $1 million grant. And it's like, what the hell is going on here, guys? Like, are you actually someone experienced with the grants? So yeah, amazing
Yeah,
to
one
learn.
million $1 million grant sounds insane to me. That sounds like a seed investment from a VC, not
Man.
like to me a grant is like pre-seed, right? Like it's this angel investor to kind of get a good idea started. So it should keep you going for a month or two full time, not much more than that, I think.
Man, not sure if you heard. I don't want like Juno gave like $1.4 million for some projects to migrate to Juno, and of course it was kind of rag. It was inexperienced people doing this, but now it's big talk about the Cosmos grants. Sorry for bothering you with this. And I'm reading the proposal on the forum, and it says small to medium sized grants up to $1 million. Like what like, and they tell me in the proposal this is very experienced people. I'm like, this person never was given crypto grants. Like I know right away because I never seen $1 million grants,
It
especially calling the
sounds,
medium, you know.
yeah, it's with the $1 million grant, it sounds like the grant is the exit already, right? So
Yeah,
like by migrating, you don't make money after the migration, you make your money before you've really migrated already. So what's the incentive to keep investing
yeah.
in your protocol if you're going to get 1 million and you can basically buy a house and just chill
Mhm.
for a few years?
Mhm. Yeah. What are the financial NFTs? This is
Mm.
something I found on your. Yeah.
Yeah, so financial NFTs are an account abstraction method,
Mhm.
which we can do in Substrate that we developed, where basically you can mint an NFT that has an address. And the NFT then acts basically as a tradable wallet. So instead of you LPing directly, you can have the NFT LP for you. The LP might be locked for a certain amount of time or
Mhm.
staked or something like that. So you can't unbond the funds directly, but you can sell the NFT to someone. So if you're looking to, let's say, buy Pika and KSM to LP, then you might be able to buy an FNFT from the open market that already does this. And obviously, an FNFT is always slightly lower priced than the unbonded assets because it's bonded already. But if you're going to bond anyway, then you might as well buy on a discount. And if you want
Nice.
to exit, then you've got an opportunity. So it's just a really nice, simple abstraction that I think people can use to build cooler stuff on top, like options,
Mhm.
staking, farming, etc.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, to explain to people, someone built the LP position on the Pablo, right? So, for
Hmm.
example, that could be staked at ST Atom, let's say, from Stride, and so some other asset that could be stablecoin. Then they take the LP position, the LP token, and this is NFT, right? This is the FNFT, and then maybe Composable build some lending borrowing platform, or they can go to, I know Umi, for example, they can go there and they can leverage this position, but maybe if they want out, they can sell it right away to not wait to later unbond it, right?
Yeah,
Nice. Like really,
and
really cool stuff.
with current design, it seems that we can also use this on other chains. So you might
Hmm.
be able to put your osmosis positions in an FNFT and sell them on
Hmm.
Near or
Yeah.
Juno, for example. So it's a bit cutting edge, but it's like a counter abstraction on steroids,
Hmm.
which I really like overall.
What would be the solution for DeFi in order to be very robust system that can incentivize people who don't really have the assets? What I mean by that, the banking system has license to issue money, and could we get something in DeFi that is close to this? Not sure if this question makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, probably this is like the golden egg. Like if you were able to figure out how to do algorithmic stablecoins really, really well without risk, but in a decentralized way, so anyone can mint them. You've got a $1 trillion protocol at hands. I think I've got no solution to this in my mind
Hmm.
at the moment. I think it's hard to do. If you talk about like how can people use DeFi if they don't have that much money and still profit from this? That's also a difficult issue, right? If you only have
Hmm.
$10, you can't really do anything on Ethereum, and you're
Yeah.
priced out completely. And I think that's why we see like many people in poorer countries navigate to cheaper chains. Um, I'm kind of thinking that like bullish on perhaps different job markets on chains themselves, right? Allow
Yeah.
people to actually be paid properly. The DAO stuff that Jake is doing at the moment with vesting, etc. I think that kind of leads to it. So far, DAOs to me, they don't work that well as employers, right? They argue a lot, they give out grants, but they don't really provide a salary that is very predictable. I would love to see in the next bull market real DAOs with people working for
Hmm.
them, and having measurements that they're actually contributing, being productive, and
Hmm.
making a livelihood of this. And
Yeah.
that I think can unlock a lot for people because, for example, we can't hire people from Iran, right? Because there are simply restrictions in Europe on hiring them. But a fully decentralized DAO might be able to. And there's some great developers over there. So it's an absolute shame that from a legal perspective, we simply cannot hire them. And I feel
Hmm.
like this is why we have crypto, right? Because we think it's bullshit because a developer in Iran hasn't done anything wrong, right? They should
Hmm.
be able just to work. And if they're good at what they're
Yeah.
doing, why shouldn't they? So smart contracts can provide the solution to this.
Yeah. That's really cool because yeah, like you navigated nicely to this, because as I said, like DeFi is cool, but it cannot be like really this robust system, right? If someone wants to start the business, look, no one is gonna get the loan if they don't, lock up if they not put collateral over, which
Mhm.
is the issue here, right? Because it disqualifies all the poorer classes from participation in DeFi. It was great, Karel. Wonder if there is any question that you wish people would ask about Composable or you, and you are not being asked, and it's very annoying that no one is asking you this.
I'd say it was a great conversation. What annoys me the most usually in the crypto ecosystems is people not understanding the difference between trusted and trustless and the degrees into this. This is usually when I rant on Twitter and say this is shit, is my anger at people not understanding that layer zero just uses two private keys and that's it, right? It's
Mhm.
not even multi-sig. So what annoys me the most is people not doing their research, not trying to understand the fundamentals, and just blatantly copying marketing material. To me, try to understand the fundamentals, and I'm always willing to talk about it. Right? I think asking questions about stuff you don't understand is definitely what you should do. What you shouldn't do is go out and just sell your opinion without understanding it, because that damages everyone. People will use insecure systems, get rugged, lose their funds, sometimes be very adversely affected to it. And to me, a whole class of influencers that doesn't do their research and shields these projects is partially responsible or fully responsible, basically, for people losing their livelihoods. And that's something I can stand. And that's something that I feel like people should be dropping in our Discord. Like, don't drop in, or feel free to drop in and ask about design or when there's going to be a next release. But what I love to see is people dropping in and really discussing the fundamental tech and the vision.
Yeah, I wish more people would do it, and I wish like people like me also, like, because I might not understand. I should always like try to explain the things and not blindly shield the certain token or stuff like this. And I think the validators also should do without popping on new chains that might be dangerous, because people actually follow them sometimes and all this stuff. Okay, Karel, I see that you must go.
I must
uh,
go. Yeah, answering some of my.
enjoyed greatly, really. I hope you can come and share some more wisdom, and answer some of these silly questions that we have, so we can learn from you. Amazing. Hope we're gonna chat again. Enjoy.
Would love to.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day, everyone.
Bye bye.